I'm here today with Aaron Turner, who is the founder of One Thought. And we're going to talk a little bit about Aaron's background and what he does and his worldview. Aaron, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
I'm a Londoner, so I'm speaking to you from London. And the way back of my background is after college, I was a very academic, analytical, anxious person, heading into an established pattern of social anxiety, and following an academic career, partly because I was fascinated and partly because that's kind of all I was fit for. Didn't do very well with other people. And stumbled on this new understanding of the mind that actually my uncle and aunt were working with, which opened up this understanding about how we function and what's possible in terms of our clarity of mind. It changed everything for me. So with no background in psychology or therapy or consulting or anything, I just got really interested in that. And that was 30 years ago. And for the last 20 years, I've been trying to bring that understanding to the mainstream, which, in my opinion, if people saw the effect that their state of mind was having on them and they knew how to have a freer, clearer mind, so many of the challenges and problems and burdens that we take as a given would be a thing of the past. So kind of that's the background that kind of leads me to where we are today.
So can you talk about that a little more? So what are we talking about when you say clearing the mind, freeing the mind? What are some of the specifics of that and your philosophy around that?
A lot of time we talk about the mind. Sometimes we talk about emotions and mental health. And sometimes we talk about thought and cognition. And sometimes we talk about presence and mindfulness. But in a way, they're all seen as like separate little areas. And what we've been, I guess, discovering and appreciating is that everybody's in a state of mind at any time. And there's nothing you can see outside of that. Like, it's the way you feel, it's the way you see, it's your ability to think, reason. It's like everything is enabled or disabled by your clarity of mind. And everybody's in a clarity of mind at any time. And what's fascinating about life is if you know how to measure it, you can see how difficult and dysfunctional your life is versus on fire and in the zone you are, as a function of whatever clarity of mind you were in. So it's having this profound effect, but nobody knows it's there. So people are working harder to improve their relationship in a state of mind that causes a bad relationship. Or they're working hard to work things out with their colleagues, boss, business partner in a state of mind in which you're in no fit state to achieve that. Mm-hmm. Or you're looking to grow a company in a state of mind that has no space for new thought. How is that possible? So we kind of, on the one hand, showing, look, your state of mind is either tying your shoelaces together or putting wings on your heels. And the second part is, if you understand what determines that, power of the mind and limitation of the mind, all of a sudden you can more effortlessly navigate it for yourself.
What are some of the aspects of mental clarity that may be less intuitive, that you might be completely unaware of?
A lot of it we're highly unaware of, but some of the more surprising aspects of it is often we don't appreciate that happiness is completely unrelated to life circumstances and is just a function of having no distortion in your mind. Happiness is an experience of yourself without distortion, like of your mind. Contentment the same way. So most people are looking for the thing that will fulfill them, whereas actually fulfillment and contentment is the experience of the absence of mental distortion. It's very natural. Confidence, same way. People are looking to deal with their insecurities to find confidence, not realizing that on the other side of those thoughts of insecurity, you're naturally confident. So I guess the most surprising part of it, Jim, is just how natural and effortless deep levels of clarity are.
What are some things you can do to help cultivate that state of mind?
if you're willing to consider that when you feel stressed or upset, what you're feeling isn't necessarily real, it's just disrupted thought. And if you're willing to consider you don't need to take it as seriously as you think, it's free to run its course. So it's very counterintuitive. It's like when we lose clarity, we get tense, we want to do something, it feels serious. But it's that counterintuitive. Well, what if it's all right? It's just a phantom of your disturbed mind. So it's nothing to worry about. And that feeling of feeling like you're okay, even though everything in your sensory system is telling you it's DEFCON 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it's a really nice sensation to cultivate.
People who have that state of mind more often, what are some of the shared traits that they have? What do those people look like? It's
a really good question. So what's really interesting, one of my colleagues pointed out years ago when I was an intern, is because our corrupted mind comes from the way that we think, everybody's an individual in which they're in the ways that they're dysfunctional. Like, everyone's got their own flavor of dysfunction, you know? But when our mind's clear, we're all very the same. You'll see it that you start to feel more content and at ease. So you don't worry about yourself. You're not concerned about yourself. You're not thinking about yourself, and you start to enjoy and appreciate things. So I remember one executive that we worked with, my wife and I took him out to dinner as part of our program, and he was just enjoying everything. He's like, isn't this a great drive? And you guys are such great company. And wow, isn't this food amazing? And you know, we're eating the same food. We're like, yeah, it's all right, you know. It reminds me of that Pee Wee Herman film, like when he's looking at the pig, he's in a go, oh, have you always been so handsome? You know, and so there's a lot of natural contentment. A really interesting part of it is people feel comfortable in their own skins. There's nothing to stop them feeling at ease. And because of that, they're very open and they're nice to be with and easy to connect with. Also because your mind has that natural power behind it, you tend to be more engaged and things come easier. You just do things without thinking about them. You have more vision, you have more inspiration, you have more resourcefulness. You don't have to think about things as much because it's just obvious what makes sense, you know, what's clear. You're very considerate and caring of others. It's very, like, people don't realize that love is a function of a clear mind, which is why in the honeymoon phase of relationships, nobody's doing much analyzing and judging. They're just having a great time. And then when they decide, yeah, I must remember, I don't like that about them, all of a sudden the honeymoon phase is over. Does that answer the question?
It does. I think you're really just talking about a relaxed state of mind and sort of being aware of what's important in your life and then acting on those things.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Very true.
What is something about you that might surprise people?
I guess there's a few things that come to mind. One is, I guess I'm fairly frivolous about things. So I was thinking, you know, one thing that's quite funny is, like, I just love toys. I really love toys. I don't buy toys. I don't collect toys. I don't play with toys. But if I go somewhere and I see a new toy, I'm like, oh man, that's amazing. Like, I really appreciate the imagination and thought that goes into things made for your imagination, like toys. I think they're amazing. You can get lost in that world. So that's one thing I thought of. The other thing is that I think is quite funny about me that lots of people don't know is I can be really unemotional in my normal life, but I'm really affected by movies. I think a lot of people have that, you know? So, like, I had a really, really almost life-changing, profound experience of the movie Holiday. You know? It was so touching. And I think it's exactly what you were saying before. It's like, I'm not thinking about my life or myself. It really annoyed my wife when we got together because she's like, he doesn't cry at anything, but take him to a movie? I mean, seriously? So if I were to leave you, no tears, but like we're watching a rom-com or, a comedy or whatever, and you're getting, but it's really, it's I guess one of those things where when you have an innocence of mind, these things are very touching.
What are things in the creative world that really resonate with you, that you really enjoy?
I love looking at art and just staring at it with nothing on your mind. And what I love most about that is when you can see like the 3D texture of the brush strokes, particularly like in abstract art where it's so thick and you can go really into it. And I just absolutely love that. Absolutely love that. And I've really love electronic music because of how much texture there is in it. But I think now there's a way in which like the rawness of art and music, I think, is really touching because again, it's outside of your conceptions.
Are there things that you do to clear your mind and free your mind now? Like, do you meditate and do things like that? Or do you find it's just like a natural state of mind? And then part two is, before you spent time with I think you said your aunt and uncle, sort of, who opened you up to this whole idea of clarity of mind.
Yeah.
Before you spent time with them, was your personality like different than it is now? And how has that evolved, and how has your sort of clarity of mind evolved over the years?
Do you mind if I answer the second part first and lead into it that way?
Not at all.
So it's such a good question because people don't know how much change is possible when you go to a more natural state of mind than a more habitual state of mind, right? So I didn't know that I took on from my family of origin, if you feel like you have a problem, you have to figure it out. That was the logic. So basically what that meant, you see problems when you're anxious. So basically what it meant is, when you're anxious, think harder. So you're thinking into an anxious state of mind, which makes you anxious. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know I was doing that. And anything I saw when I was anxious, so I was incredibly self-conscious, right? Before I learned this, by the time I was 18, and I can remember the moment it started, I was 14, 15, and I asked this girl on a date, the first person I'd asked on a date that actually said yes. Okay. And I was like, oh man, this is fantastic. She said, yes, we're going on a date. And then I had this insecure thought pop in the back of my mind. Oh man, you better make sure you don't look like an idiot. And instead of being like, whatever, I was like, oh yeah, good point. So I started thinking about myself in a way that made me self-conscious. And the date was a complete disaster. She might as well have gone on a date with the chair I was sitting on, because I was in my head like, oh, don't do this, don't do that. And I kept thinking that way more and more and more. So I was one of these people that was not really, I wouldn't really be with you if I was with you, because I'd be thinking about my life. People would say, Aaron, you're thinking too much. And I was like, no, I'm not thinking enough. I got more to figure out here. So I was very contained, very analytical, very unfeelingful, very ill at ease. By the time I was 18, I was getting social anxiety. So I was making up good reasons why I didn't go to dinner parties. Like, I'm not superficial and I don't buy into all that stupid stuff. But really, I was desperately uncomfortable. And it wasn't until I started to learn about this that I thought, oh, what if all that is thought? What if that's all thought? And actually in my university exams, I was clinically anxious, utterly clinically anxious. And I thought there was something wrong with me. But when I started to consider it's all thought, I thought, well, then I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to solve it. I don't have to worry about it. I just have to get comfortable living with it being a part of my kind of mental conveyor belt. And my personality literally changed overnight. So all of a sudden I discovered I was comfortable around other people when I wasn't listening to my anxious thinking. And I was happy and I did like other people and I loved idle chit chat. And before I learned this, I had massive performance anxiety. So I used to play music because it was one of the things that took me out of my head, where I actually felt good. But if I had to play a gig, you would have thought I never picked up a guitar before. I couldn't play in tune. I couldn't play in time. And as my academic career progressed, I was a very good thinker, but I couldn't do conference talks. I had to read it. Mm-hmm. I couldn't speak it. I had to read it. And after I learned this, that's not a problem. It's not a problem at all. So I'm very, obviously I get nervous and self-conscious like anybody else, but generally I'm happy being comfortable and at ease, and I literally have a dissonant personality. It's totally different. Mm-hmm. And when I in the first 10 years I did this work, I was half-time a registered counselor, and I would work with people who had anxiety disorders. And I would say to them, look, I know that you don't have to be like this. I was like you. And they're like, no, that can't be. I know you think you were. There's no way you can be like me and then end up like you. And weirdly, before I learned this, one of the other things I did to have a clear mind was martial arts, because it doesn't make sense to be thinking while somebody's trying to attack you. It's just not a good idea. And as part of that, there was a lot of meditation, which was very helpful to me, because I would spend a lot of time deliberately not paying attention to my thinking, and I would feel much clearer after it.
You're trying to escape from your own dysfunction, basically.
Yeah, right.
To get outside.
And when you realize, go ahead. Sorry, Jim.
To get outside of your own head and find that peace or that tranquility.
Yeah,
it seems exactly. Like you have as a state of mind.
Yeah, exactly. And it really is, considering that it's normal. And if you don't feel that, you can just get more comfortable within yourself. So you kind of drop out of your own mental preoccupation or effort. And it's not just that, I'm happy where I'm at. It's like, I know it's natural to go deeper. So there are times in my life, like we run a conference every year, and at that conference, I go deeper, not because of the talks, but because I'm not doing my normal thinking. Same thing happened in lockdown. When we hit lockdown, because all my normal thinking about what time is it, where am I going, what's the tube, what shall I have for lunch, like all that apparently innocuous thinking, when that stopped making sense, my mind just dropped deeper. And I was like, wow. I had no idea that seemingly harmless logistical thinking was keeping me at a level. So I guess it's just having an open mind and having a feeling for what it feels like to be less engaged in your mind, and just respecting that direction, I guess.
One last question for you.
Okay.
And that is, what is your vision, your dream for One Thought?
Yeah, I love this, because One Thought is a vision and a dream. That's what it is. We work with organizations, we work with companies, but it's a vision and a dream. And the vision and a dream is it's very realistic that there's a world where everybody knows it's natural to have well-being and clarity, and they know when they have it. So when they're in their reactive, distorted thought, they don't treat it as real. So we don't act as much out of it. So there's less conflict, there's less suffering, there's less greed and insecurity. And as a result, because there's a much clearer mind governing all of us more of the time, we're happier. Well-being's an assumed given. Close, generally loving, close relationships that fluctuate now and again into reactivity is a given. And if you read the papers, all of the problems and challenges in well-being, in businesses, in society, in relationships, people look at it and they're like, I remember when people didn't used to understand the mind and all this shit was normal. That's the vision.
That's a good vision. I like that. It's been really fun speaking with you and getting to know you, and look forward to doing this again sometime. Thanks.
Me too. Thank you. I enjoyed it too.